back. We'll go on to item B7, report on future ready adoption at grades 7, 8. Superintendent Abel?
Senior Director Godot will be making the presentation this evening.
In our last report, we heard a need to support our junior high schools. Tonight, Educational Services will provide a report on future ready adoption for grades 7 and 8. The report addresses Vice President Newman's questions from the October board meeting. Senior Director Brad Godot is leading the ELA and Social Studies adoption and will present tonight.
Good evening, Board President Zawalin, trustees, Superintendent Abel, and Cabinet. On October 30th, the board directed district staff to prepare additional information related to the future-ready adoption at grades 7 and 8, as a future-ready adoption would necessitate the purchase of digital devices for junior high school students. In August 2014, Davis High became the first school in our district to move to one-to-one digital devices. In August of this year, one-to-one digital devices were implemented to support digital curriculum at the district's remaining 7 high schools. During the spring semester of this school year, junior high school teachers and students throughout the district will pilot ELA and social science curriculum from several publishers. Education Code 60200B1 states that instructional materials adoptions occur every 8 years in English language arts, mathematics, history, social science, and other subjects. The last junior high adoption of ELA curriculum occurred in 2004-05. Social science curriculum at the junior high was last adopted in 2005-06. To provide perspective, prior to this year, the last adoption of ELA curriculum at grades 9-10 occurred in 2005-06 and in grades 11-12 in 2006-07. Adoption timelines follow California Department of Education recommendations. Based on this information, it is imperative that the selection, pilot, and adoption of junior high curriculum proceed expeditiously and without delay. In the past months, Educational Services has facilitated the creation of ELA and social science adoption committees for grades 7 and 8. The 2 junior high adoption committees consist of their respective content areas, curriculum coaches, teachers, MTA representatives, curriculum coordinators and coaches, district improvement facilitators, bilingual language development specialists, special education teachers, and in the case of our social science adoption committee, Trustee Walker. The coming days and weeks are critical periods for the adoption committees. Both committees have convened multiple times over the past 6 weeks to review their respective California state frameworks and standards, the charge of their committees, the parameters of this adoption, and they've reviewed, discussed, and revised a common criterion and rating chart to evaluate the curriculum programs. The committees both spent a full day receiving publisher presentations that demonstrated the components of each publisher's curriculum. They have spent considerable time over the past weeks evaluating those materials and will be meeting in the next week to select which 2 curriculums in ELA and social science to pilot this spring. There are 3 models by which curriculum can be delivered to students: print only, digital only, and a hybrid of both print and digital. The digital and the hybrid model may consist of either a one-to-one device or a COW, or a computer on wheels. Our adoption committees are tasked with evaluating publishers based upon specific criteria. The lens by which the ELA and social science adoption committees evaluate instructional materials to pilot must account for the manner in which the curriculum will be delivered, i.e. print only, digital only, or hybrid. Clearly, the decision as to how curriculum will be delivered to students is of paramount importance at this time. It was suggested at the October 30th board meeting that a phasing in of one-to-one might be an option. If only one junior high is selected to proceed with a digital adoption, the 3 other would need to evaluate the publisher instructional materials with their focus on print. This presents a problem in that one publisher may offer a very strong digital curriculum while not offering print materials, or their print materials may not be at the level of another publisher's textbook. This could result in 2 different curriculum in a single content area at the junior high school level. Having 2 publishers in the same content area, Publisher A, digital, Publisher B, print would be an example, could present training and support issues as well. If the decision is made to proceed with junior high adopting digital curriculum, the other 3 junior highs would need to adopt curriculum with printed instructional materials. If at a later date a decision is made to transition the 3 non-digital junior highs to a digital 4th curriculum prior to the next adoption cycle, the fiscal impact would be significantly higher in that textbooks would have already been purchased and digital curriculum and devices would be added on top of the cost of the textbooks in some cases. Many of the publishers only offer a hybrid or digital option. These options would require either COWS or one-to-one devices. It is important to note that if the COWS option is chosen, it would create an equity issue for students without access to computers at home. In essence, students without access at home, their educational experience stops at the classroom door versus students' families with the means and resources at home. The equity and achievement gap widens. On page 3 of the report, we've included a table that contrasts traditional text with digital text. As we have learned through the research and implementation phases of one-to-one digital devices at the high school level, digital curriculum is dynamic and expository pieces and events are updated as they happen. Content is linear and in context and is updated regularly. Additionally, translations are available instantly. Teachers can check for understanding more fully, and remediation efforts are much easier to access and can occur more quickly. Also in our report, we've included research related to achievement. In the Hanover study, 7th grade students in their second year of one-to-one programs showed statistically significant gains on ELA state assessment scores compared to students not enrolled in the program. Other positive changes due to the one-to-one program implementation included more personalized lesson plans for students, a decrease in lost homework and assignments for teachers, and an increase of students producing content instead of just consuming it. The board also asked how one-to-one implementation helps student understanding in math. One-to-one devices bring a host of useful tools to bear in math. As you may have noted, many of these digital tools have been proven by John Hattie's research to show better than average effect size. Desmos, Khan Academy, and OneNote class notebooks are just 3 examples of the digital instructional supports that are available in mathematics. Davis High School math teacher Roger Fountain stated, "Students have access to many more resources than in the past, and many students have even taken the initiative to learn more than what is taught in schools. I believe that providing technology helps to close the achievement gap. Those who can't afford tech at home are now provided the opportunity to learn at home and have a more equitable learning experience." One area discussed last meeting was the impact that one-to-one devices can have on student equity. Our Modesto City Schools vision statement states that every student will graduate college and career ready with the knowledge, abilities, and character traits needed to thrive in a global society. I think we can all agree that digital devices are a common tool in the 21st century learning, and that in order for our students to effectively navigate and interact in a global society, it is increasingly necessary for them to communicate and collaborate via digital devices. The U.S. Department of Education report in 2010 states that digital equity is now being viewed as a civil rights issue, and that a commitment by local school districts to act now and deploy one-to-one devices ensures that all students will have equitable access for high-quality digital learning. The most significant outcome a one-to-one launch provides is the closure of the achievement gap. In reviewing my predecessor Thor Harrison's presentation to the board, he stated that a study facilitated by Kay in 2010 found that the achievement gap between low-income students and their peers shrank with one-to-one implementation, while Bernard et al. In 2007 found that one-to-one learning helped low-achieving students improve their math and ELA scores more than high-achieving students. So how is this working in our high schools? One of the challenges with one-to-one devices is internet connectivity at home. Schools have worked hard to help families take advantage of reduced cost home broadband programs offered to those that are socioeconomically disadvantaged. With the introduction of a digital device into these homes, along with reduced cost internet service, our most needy students and their families can have access to the internet. 85% of families at our junior highs are classified as socioeconomically disadvantaged. Most notably is Handshot 97% and Mark Twain at 96%. I would like to highlight Davis High English and Avid Site Coordinator Joe Koski's statements that are included in this report. Public education is about equal access to high-quality instruction and materials, which includes modern technological opportunities for students. Although quality instruction does exist without technology, technology can allow for enhancement through the classroom experience, individualized instruction, differentiation, and it can motivate learners. Devices with internet access also aid students in accessing information and tools that they may not have at home. She also states, my classroom assignments are accessible 24 hours a day. I can communicate with my students individually and collectively through a learning management system. When I have a sub, I can post video instructions directly to my students. I am able to better challenge highly motivated learners by giving them continual access to learning opportunities. So, in comparison of our local districts' digital device implementation, we researched digital device adoptions across Stanislaus County. Ceres, Houston, Riverbank, and Waterford all send Chromebooks home with their junior high school students. Additionally, the Sylvan School District sends iPads home with their junior high school students. Ceres, Empire, Houston, Riverbank, Salida, Sylvan, and Waterford have all adopted digital ELA curriculum, with Ceres, Empire, Riverbank, Salida, and Waterford also adopting digital math curriculum. In the chart on page 10, please note that the estimated per pupil costs for ELA curriculum adoption is categorized in the 3 delivery models are listed. Both the digital and hybrid delivery models do not include the costs of the digital devices in that chart on page 10. In the chart on page 11, please note that the estimated per pupil costs for social science curriculum adoption is also categorized in the 3 delivery models. Both the ELA and social science per pupil costs were estimated based on 3,000 students. Of note is that 3 of the 6 ELA and social science publishers no longer offer a, quote, textbook-only print curricular program. So when considering a hybrid model of curriculum delivery through the deployment of cows in the junior high, ELA, and social science classrooms next year, the estimated cost of purchasing computers on wheels in approximately 29 classrooms across the 4 junior highs is roughly estimated at nearly $650,000. Each computer on wheels costs $22,111.32. An estimate of placing cows in every ELA and social science classroom comes up to about $641,000. Please remember that if the hybrid curriculum model is selected for ELA and social science, additional cows would need to be purchased for each subsequent adoption. For example, next year science, we pilot and adopt. The following year, health, etc. Additional concerns related to implementation with cows include the following. When students have access to digital textbooks only in class, the result in a loss of valuable academic time in class, at a minimum, 5 minutes of log in, log out, and returning to the cart for recharging and monitoring devices. Understanding that one-to-one, the student doesn't have that same procedural process at the start and the end of every period. Conservative estimate of 5 minutes equals roughly 900 minutes or 18 days of class time, almost a month of class time that could be lost just moving a device from a cart to my desk, back from my desk to the cart, if we're looking at just CAL's implementation only. Students who fall behind in completing work in the digital realm will have limited ability to be successful in a course. Even if the teacher is able to take all learner styles and challenges into account, it's difficult to differentiate time so as to meet student needs and or IEP 504 requirements with CAL-based instructional limitations. The result could be underutilization of devices and interactive programs. If computer lab computers are any indication of how students treat devices for which they are not responsible, there may be increased issues with taking care of the cows. When a student has a one-to-one device checked out to them, it's their device, they're accountable for it. When they're working with a cow, each day or each period they go in and use that cow, they may have a different device, and holding students accountable for damage is an issue. A one-to-one device assigned to each junior high student would provide daily access to digital tools in all classrooms, not just ELA and social science. Thank you for your patience through this presentation. At this time, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you very much. Questions from the board. Trustee Newman.
Well, thank you to Ms. Mack and Mr. Godot for this thorough report, and your team. I imagine Mr. Rich had something to do with it too in this report. Very thorough, answered all the questions, and I read all of it. And I'm sure my board members did too. So I have, I think, 3 questions. Where's the first one? Oh, okay. On this adoption chart on the first page of the report, the sequencing of adoption, that was very helpful. The math is in 2021 pilot and in 2022 because we've phased in. Can you explain why that's so late? Because we kind of have new math curriculum now.
We did implement we implemented math at the time that it was out. We thought more math would come out, but it never really enhanced. So this timeline here is CDE's timeline. So this is when the new standards will be coming out, our new framework would come out, and this is their timeline of when they would recommend piloting and adopting math.
So until this point, that we would continue to use the MVP, and I guess now Engage New York is the new name is Eureka. We would continue to use those. They're not a textbook per se, but there's a digital version and a paper version of them.
Not as clearly as the new ELA or new social studies.
I know.
Those are very clear on digital. On the math pieces that they've enhanced it, but I wouldn't say it's really digital at this time. There are some areas that we're looking at that we can enhance it, but it still wouldn't be as clean of a digital as the ELA, the social studies that really are digital curriculum.
And in junior high, are we using the Utah project? Still.
The Utah math, yes,
Utah
that
math,
is correct. I just want to clarify that we are not fully using Eureka Math. Eureka Math has done some additions or updates. We've only done 2 modules of that in 2 different grade levels. We were still using the Engage New York, and we do follow the Eureka suggestions, but we have not purchased Eureka Math. We continue to print, I said that correct. And we continue print Engage New York and follow the Eureka suggestions.
And Engage New York K through 6, then Utah 7 and 8, and then MVP 9 through 12.
That is correct.
Okay. Having had kids in all this Common Core, I got that down. So then the second question is on page 4 of the report. The implementation of the digital tools are one of the key factors of its success is checking for understanding, facilitating frequent feedback, and leveraging student creativity, working towards mastery, and more. Okay, the feedback issue, in order for this to work, this needs to be in our collective bargaining agreement, the requiring that for that to work. Is that in the facilitating frequent feedback and that component of it? Do we have that addressed at all?
That does not have to be addressed in our.
It doesn't?
No, and we can.
Yeah, feedback is referring to checking for understanding.
Yes.
Right. So, but that's how it works. That's how the tool is used more effectively. And so I was just wondering how it aligns with if we need something in our contract.
Not for check for understanding. That's an instructional strategy, and it's enhanced through digital.
Okay.
For example, in a math classroom, if we want to check for understanding it, if I want to see all 38 kids, what their answers are in real time as they're working on them, give them feedback immediately to them,
Yeah.
call a class together, all of that can happen in a digital realm wirelessly and facilitated much easier than in a
Whiteboards and you hold it up.
Yeah, than an analog
That's
world.
what the kids used to do. And so that's what I know they're doing. It works, but that was getting the feedback. Then last question is on page 15 of the report. One of the most commonly reported problem with going one-to-one, and I appreciate all these sources and the breadth of sources that you have here. But one of them talked about the insufficient internet bandwidth. Do we have, I know this was a huge undertaking in our high schools to get ready for one-to-one. How are we ready to go with the wires and cables in our 7 and 8?
Yes, Cindy Minter did a very nice job of leading that, and so we are ready.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Trustee Brown.
Yes, I was very interested as I read through this information to look for equity and opportunities for our disadvantaged students and from especially those who do not have the connectivity at home now. And I'm pleased to see the information that was there. I also asked a lot of questions when we visited. I was able to visit Modesto High School and see the devices in youth and the AVID program. I was asking for some information that would help me understand more some advantages with the Smarter Balanced Assessment and looking at our scores. One of the things that I discovered, and I'm wondering if we have any data that can help explain this, is that the amount of teaching time to get our students ready to take an exam on the computer can be as many as 2 to 3 weeks time of instruction that's not spent teaching the curriculum and the information that needs to be learned for instruction. So I see that one of the advantages of the digital devices one-on-one is that our kids will already know how to use them and know how to work a problem in math and know how to answer a question in English because they're already using that device, not having to learn how to use the device so that they can use it in testing. So I look at our gaps. I look at the fact that we are behind and falling in our 6, 7, and 8 years, and I see some great opportunity. Do we have data that is going to help us support that?
I'd like to comment regarding the assessment that you were sharing. Our new ELA adoption has a wonderful assessment, and it aligns so much with the SBAC. The students are taking an assessment that looks like SBAC. We have not had that until this school year, so it would not be reflected in the test scores. Secondly, we only test for a week in K6. It's 1 week, it's within their pacing guide, and 1 week they don't test every single day, but they have a whole week that they can do the testing, so it's not more than a week of assessing.
Excuse me, but teaching the kids how to use the computer for that testing. Class and instruction time, doesn't it?
For example, in K6, we have the computer literacy class that is teaching it. So it's during their time when the teachers have prep. So it's not taken away from instructional time because they have a prep time. So the teachers aren't teaching that. The kids are already learning it through their computer literacy, which was a great addition to our LCAP. So that is not taken away from instructional time. So once they get the test, they do take the test in their classroom during that time, which is embedded in their pacing guide.
So what I did here, and I have to liken this to what my calculus program was compared to what's being taught in the high schools today. Calculus for me, we spent the first month learning how to use a slide rule. We learned how to use the tools, not how to do the math. And so I heard from the math instructor that so much of the math instruction time at the high school level had been spent teaching the kids how to do their math problems on a computer so they'd be ready for the testing. And so for me, I see that that's captured instruction time that can now go into curriculum rather than using tools. So I'm excited to see us getting the tools in the hands of the students so that they have the ability to test at their highest level.
To comment briefly on that, also the efficiency of one-to-one versus CALS would also aid in the testing schedule at the junior high level. with SBAC. Now we're looking at 3 to 4 weeks of rotating cows and multiple hours, where if students have one-to-one devices, that time is truncated, considerably, which also provides for more time for instruction, more weeks of instruction.
And to add to that, in the past, we started our SBAC testing in February, which did not give us as many days instruction. So that is affected in our assessment results. This last year we did in March. We're now moving it after spring break. So every year we have more devices, the more time we can give to instruction, which we really need for our test results, and then less time on testing in the end of the year. We'll still be able to get all kids through testing, but these devices are really enhancing our instructional time, which we really need to enhance these scores.
All right, I'll just ask one quick question before we go on. Do teachers really spend a month preparing students how to take the test? Because in my experience, the young people know how to use technology way quicker than the adults.
So that's a real good comment to make, that, hey, they're much more technologically savvy, they can handle this. Part of it has to do with the environment with which they're testing. So one of the things that students have to do is they're in a lockdown browser, which doesn't allow them to go to anywhere else for obvious reasons, so they can't access information that could help them with the test. So learning that environment, learning the tools that are available for them, learning how to manipulate or highlight a passage and then use that in their answer for an English test, all of that happens in a world that they're not familiar with as they're just texting or sending other messages. So having a prepared opportunity to do that all along their experience really benefits them when it actually comes down. It lowers that affective filter so that they're able to actually concentrate on the test and not on the function of it.
So if they were taking the test on their cell phone, it would be
We do awesome.
quicker. Yeah,
Yeah.
it'd be great. Okay, got it. That's what I thought. All right, Trustee Marks.
So I have a question on, well, it's page 5, but B74, on the 3 different tools, the digital tools, Desmos, Khan Academy, OneNote Class Notebook. Is there an added cost to using these? Okay, they just they just have access to them.
So Desmos is the adopted calculator for the SBAC exam, and with it they have these new activities that allow for some amazing feedback by the teachers. It is 100% free, and it will always be free. It's best leveraged when students have it in their hands. Khan Academy also is 100% free. A lot of us know that. They've got an amazing amount of tools there. And then OneNote Class Notebook is a Microsoft product that comes with our Microsoft agreement, just like when we have Word and PowerPoint. It is a free tool. Well, we pay for it, but it's part of the package that we already pay for, so there's no added cost to that.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
All right, Trustee Walker.
Let's see. I might be slightly recovered. It's hard to tell. I guess at the end of the last meeting, I was looking for something that said it was something that wasn't all or nothing. And I feel like we've gone from all or nothing to all plus some and throw in math. Frustrating. Middle schools using these computers, I mentioned at the last meeting, we came out of the Sylvan District. Outside of the promotion ceremony, my happiest moment was giving that iPad back. We did math on the iPad in 7th and 8th grade, and we did courses on it. It was not fun. It was a distraction. It wasn't helpful. I don't think it's a silver bullet. We talk about Davis. I ran the numbers. Davis has had computers for 4 years. It's a site with 80% socioeconomically disadvantaged students. Math scores not met and nearly met 88, 91%. It hasn't moved those numbers. A lot of the reference material in the report came from a group called International Society for Technology and Education. I wonder if anybody besides me looked at their corporate sponsors. It's a nonprofit. It's a who's who of technology companies, all selling products. It's very difficult to get an objective point of view when it's coming from somebody whose business is to sell technology. So the question I have, I guess, goes back to earlier this year. Back in May, we were talking about math. I had teachers talking to me, and I asked them where were the textbooks. And I was told that they took the textbooks out of the classrooms and took them away in math. Over the summer, I was contacted about textbooks being taken out of the classrooms in elementary schools. And recently, I've had other teachers tell me we're pulling textbooks out of the high schools as well. Is this all? Or is this a only tool we're gonna use? We could do the history program, and these have been phenomenal people I've worked with. Great 16, 18 hours with them. A couple of hundred of these, which is what we're putting in the classrooms. The bonus, 40 of these, which is the store-bought version. The teacher input on the big computers, to me, is where the bang for the buck is. When I was sitting there talking with these teachers and sort of learning, because I had to do a lot of learning. I didn't know what a DBQ was last week, now I do, right? The fact that the teachers could do these DBQs on these computers and set their time frame up and look at the essential question and do the vocabulary, that to me is where the bang for the buck is here, but that doesn't require thousands of computers, it requires 40 or 50. A couple of hundred of these, but the goal is to put every class and every curriculum on a computer. I'm gonna be on the losing side here.
Did Trustee Walker ask a question regarding the textbooks going out? Yes or no? Yeah.
I was stunned by it, to hear that the textbooks were being taken out of classrooms. I just was.
Well,
And I didn't say anything then because I didn't believe it, but it sort of keeps coming back.
whenever we implement or adopt, the old materials would leave and the new materials would come in. For math, our Engage New York or our Utah Math or MVP is our new materials for math. And for ELA, these guys can talk a little bit more, but not only did we do the digital, we also purchase consumables. So we have a little bit of a hybrid in our classroom so that there is materials. As you notice, not sure what page it was, where it talks about the different options or different hybrid and the print materials and the digital, that we do have options. In the hybrid, you get the mix. In the digital, you still, just like we did, purchase some textbooks, or we didn't just purchase digital is what I'm trying to explain for ELA. So we have the option depending on what the committee comes up with.
It's fantastic material. I don't disagree with that. I just don't see why it has to be a one-to-one matching device that everybody takes home. You have the hybrid, and I don't want to get into because that's for their decision to be made. I benefit by being in the room and learning, and I've learned a ton sitting there with them. I mean, they're fantastic people. I mean, Dr. Zambos, I've learned from her, and there's a way to do this with a couple of hundred of these and 40 of these and still have the textbooks, but I don't understand why everything has to be cleared out, and if a teacher has a resource, why they couldn't use it for whatever needs they need. If you've got something that works and you have something old that you could use it. It just seems like we're moving at 900 miles an hour to put these devices in place. And it's not a question, it's in the next part of the meeting on an actual research report done at West Point with control groups. And it's not a silver bullet, and I don't see it as a silver bullet.
We take out the materials because they're old standards, so we don't want the teachers to be continuing to teach those materials when they're old standards.
Excuse me, any comments from the public?
On page 3, you put a quote from Spring Lake Park School District. Spring Lake Park School District is a suburb. It has a population of 6,412. 83.7% of those students are white, middle-class suburban families. And the population of the school is 93.9% white, 1% black, 0.4% Native American, not one Hispanic student in that school. And they have one K-8 school and one high school. And so naturally they're going to have great scores. Then we go over to the next page where we have Mooresville, graded school district. They have a very large parent involvement. They have a population of 34,000. They have 90% English and 5% Spanish speaking. We come from a population of 212,175, and we have a vast majority of children in our low-income areas who do not speak English. And we have anywhere from 35 to 37% who are just learning English right now. So you can't compare these scores with the scores that we have here and the quotes that you have of how great it is. We just implemented it in the high schools this year. We've got all of our high schools now. We've had Davis for 4 years with not much significant change. We just started with all of the high schools. We haven't had an opportunity to see how effective it is in the high schools before we go arming more students. Now, one thing you have to know is that they need internet at home. Some of our students don't have electricity at home. So how are they going to have internet? We have some children whose families are running their lights and water on a generator. People, you have to get out there and find out what's really happening in the real world. Everybody doesn't have the same accesses that we have. I agree we need to go with some kind of computer. But to arm every 7th and 8th grader with an individual tablet to take home, I think is an unrealistic goal for us to be getting ventured in. It is a very expensive, costly endeavor to do that quickly when we just started with the high school and we have not had an opportunity to really study the effectiveness. I hope as board members you will use good judgment, be good stewards of our tax dollars, and not rush into something that is going to be a disaster for us. And a very costly disaster. Thank you.
Good evening, Doug Burton on behalf of Modesto teachers. To me, the big takeaway from this report is found on B78 or page 9. It's the list of all of the other districts in the county that are using one-to-one devices. You'll notice there's only one other district in this county that's using Windows-based devices. And there's a reason for that. It costs a lot more. You've hired an army of technicians and you will continue to hire armies of technicians to support Windows-based products as opposed to going with Chromebooks. So that's something, I'm not saying you shouldn't go one-to-one, but I think you need to seriously consider how you do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for letting me know that New York math was Eureka. I had the unfortunate task of going to the Youth Authority, and at that time, can everybody remember when they was giving out these Apple computers? Remember, the Apple computers was free, but later on, you had to pay for the other curriculum. Everything is free at first, then you're going to have to pay for it. The unfortunate thing that I found is that when I use Eureka math, Eureka changes all the time. So we had to end up paying a tremendous amount of money for the changes. And if you look at the curriculum like Ms. Williams basically did, I started looking at who was writing this curriculum. And I found out the people that was behind the curriculum was people that was in charter schools. Most of the curriculum that you see on these computers are people that's interested in the development of charter schools. Check it out and you'll find it yourself. So when you look at some things, and Mike knows that I went to here for 3 years, and I would say that I would walk up to a student and say, what is 5 times 8? They didn't know their multiplication tables. And what they would say is that they can use a calculator. And I said, well, that sounds good. But if you start talking about 2x plus 1 minus equals 15, they could not do algebra, because they didn't understand that the operation of addition is the opposite of subtraction, the operation of multiplication, the operation is opposite of division, And if you cannot do that, you cannot solve any word problems. It's good to teach to the test, but in college, they're not going to do none of this stuff. So when people say, well, we're looking at the outcome, the most important things about math is procedures. Understanding why these procedures work, not understanding how to get the answer to the test. Because when you go to a college, they're going to want to know, well, how did you get that answer? How did that 2x plus 1 equal 15? How did you know how to have the -1 and solve the equation and divide the 2x so you could actually do the same thing on both sides? That's impossible to do. And the last thing I will say is this, is that if we do not let our teachers actually get involved, our math teachers involved, and I'm going to hurry up and get through, with helping with this curriculum, then you're going to find out it's going to be a big mess. So therefore, I would not spend a dime on these Chromes. I would still use books, and everybody should have passed Measure S, because when you sit down and you can read some things, especially for special ed students, then they will learn how to do these things. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Welcome.
Good evening, I'm Jennifer Marino. I have 2 children at Sonoma Elementary, and my 6th grader, Joaquin, is extremely excited to become a Loma Lancer next fall. And he's very excited to engage in some new digital curriculum. As a parent of a future 7th grader, I am hoping that you will vote yes to go one-to-one devices in junior high. Joaquin has had computer literacy classes at Sonoma, and this is a natural progression entering junior high to have one-to-one devices and to exercise the computer skills he's learned in an academic setting, but also to learn many new computer literacy skills as they're applied to the core academic areas. I want my son to be college and career ready. These devices would help provide a foundation for academic literacy. These devices would give the students an opportunity to collaborate and engage with the curriculum in ways a book never could. Without one-to-one devices, how is my son supposed to extend learning practice of his computer literacy skills at home? How will he be able to collaborate and engage with others to enhance his learning as well as theirs when the technology gap is so wide? How much learning will he miss using the device for a possibility of one day? That is assuming that a teacher will be able to use the device more often than a book. Neighboring districts have adopted that one-to-one device in middle schools, and many of those students will be sitting next to my son, as well as many other MCS students in high school classes. Will he and other MCS students be at a disadvantage? Knowing that the high schools are one-to-one, I want my children and all others to be prepared by experiencing learning how to best use the computer at school and at home. Why would I want him to be 2 steps, giant steps, backwards?
Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone, I'm Amy Phillips. I'm a teacher at Loma Junior High. Tom Torkelson, State Superintendent, and Michael Kirst, President of the State Board of Education, in the introduction to the English Language Arts, English Language Development Literacy Framework, say that the document contains strategies for incorporating technology. The framework, the guiding principle of literacy instruction in California, later states that California students will use technology and digital media strategically and capably. Students will employ technology thoughtfully to enhance their reading, writing, speaking, listening, and language use. Are students to employ technology thoughtfully only when they are in the classroom? Does this sound like we are preparing all students for success in their century? Am I to tell my students, our children, our future, that they are to come to class prepared, having read or researched the material under study, speaking and listening standard number 1, without giving them access to research the material outside of class time. So many publishers are creating opportunities within their programs for student-initiated, self-directed further study. Are these opportunities to be available only to students whose families can provide access? If I send a book home with a struggling reader, will they hear any of the selections professionally read with appropriate syntactical chunking? No, they will not, and the students don't need internet to hear that. If I send students home with the ability to listen to these selections multiple times, they will be prepared to participate in classroom discussions the next day. But again, these opportunities need to be available to all students. The one-to-one initiative clearly aligns with and supports the student growth toward the LCAP goal number 1, action number 2, which is equitable access to technology. Am I to expect students to include multimedia components, speaking and listening number 5, when they only have 52 minutes of class time, minus, of course, the minutes to get the device in and out of a cart? Even with the best procedures implemented, precious classroom minutes will be lost when the students have to take that device in and out every day. And yes, my students use them every day. Am I to tell my students, our children, our future, that technology that is never farther away from me than my watch is only available to them when they're in the classroom? Why are we expanding the digital divide instead of shrinking it? Am I to tell them that even as we, as a district, purchase the latest, the greatest, the best of ELA programs available, programs with the ability to scaffold the pacing, the audio, the video, of everything from Dr. King's dream speech or an interview with S.E. Hinton, but that information is only available to them while they're sitting in my classroom? Again, the one-to-one initiative clearly aligns with and supports student growth toward LCAP goal number 2, which is to increase the achievement to ensure college readiness. Why are we limiting our students instead of unleashing their potential? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Why don't you go ahead and step up after they're done?
So, bear with me, I've never gone to a meeting before. My name is Jason Flora. I teach at Henshaw Middle School. I know that school's been brought up a lot. I teach 7th grade history and 8th grade history and 7th grade Avid and 8th grade study skills. Okay, so I'm kind of all over the place. This year I've been fortunate enough to, my principal, Ms. Farhadi, I must thank her. She's given me a cow in my room since day 1 this year. And it's been a lot of time on my part to make digital material for all my students. The reason why I want to do this is I had 7 of my students that the last quarter of last year, I was able to have a cow just for my 8th graders. And I got them how to use Schoology because I didn't want my kids to be at a disadvantage when they went to Downey next year. And 7 of them came back this year and said, Mr. Flora, thank you for showing us how to use this because I didn't feel like the dumb kid in class this year. I was able to show all the kids how to use these devices. And these were kids who, they weren't the A students. They were the B, C, and D students, but they got engaged and empowered by being able to do these things. And they're like, so far some of these kids, I was worried about them going to high school. They're doing great because they already had the confidence walking in there. I've listened to some more issues tonight. Chromebooks, yes, they're cheaper. We just had an incident last week. Google is down. So the only kids who were able to do something were the kids using our devices, because most of the kids, they use Google Chrome because they got used to that, slides, docs, whatever. But it was down for, I don't know, a couple days last week during some of my periods. But so the only kids who were able to work were the ones who had the Microsoft on there, and they could save it to our OneDrive. Bear with me, I'm a little nervous, so.
All right, we're glad
But
you're here.
it's a little more expensive, I understand that, but our school, like you guys said, 96, 97%, they don't have these devices at home. And I've been talking about my students every day. Here's what you might have next year. You mean I might have a computer I can use at home all by myself? I mean, I might have one? I'm like, yeah, they might get approved one for you to take home and use. So I mean, I can type my stuff at home? And they're like, well, I got Wi-Fi hotspot on my phone. Sure, I can use that on your computer. So I encourage you guys to approve these devices, just anything else, just the equitable of it. If you want to come to my classroom, you're more than welcome to come to my classroom. Just my EL students alone, they never want to raise their hands a lot of times. But I can put discussion boards almost every single day. They walk in, they log into the computer. Every one of my kids in the class know how to log straight in. They go straight to the Daily Bell Knowledge question. They answer it. I get amazing answers that I never, ever will get without digital. They will respond back and forth to each other. They go back and forth because they make it part of the thing. They have to reply to each other. And very rarely do they actually go off topic. Now they know I have land school and I can see what they're doing. But that's another subject. But overall, I just want to say that 7th graders, you guys spend a lot of money on educating, with the computer literacy programs. I can see the difference between my 7th graders. They know how to use the computers. My 8th graders, now that I'm doing it this year, use it or lose it. They're losing it. So you're paying all this money for these computer literacy classes. By the time they get to high school, they've lost all the stuff they've learned. So my 7th graders know more about how to use computers than my 8th graders, sadly. So I'm encouraging you to do it just because I see my kids every day and just how much more they're engaged with the computers. I cannot tell you enough how important it is that they need to have these things at home and in the classroom. So I had more stuff, but I'm nervous, so thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, if we could recognize some other people, since you've spoken before, I'd really like
I
to
just
hear from
want to
other
ask about the finances. Where is the finances going to come from? Last time we said that we would be looking at LCAP funds for next year, 18-19, and using those funds to purchase this equipment. I still need to know where the funds are coming from and what percentage of LCAP money will be used for that, and that was not answered.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Barry Coates from the Loma Junior High. Dan asked me to share a few words. So one of the biggest concerns I hear tonight is that our math curriculum, the ability to get help outside the classroom. So one of the things, last year we had presentations by Alan November, and he showed students that are helping other students with their videos. And then I was camping that following summer, and there was a math teacher there, and he started telling me about his flipped classroom, about how he's posting his lesson. They were doing the lesson at home, and then they were doing the homework in school. And so I said, man, I have to try this. So I got Matt Ketchum to come into my room, and he showed me how to make videos on PowerPoint Mix. And so I post videos. So when I give a homework assignment, I attempt to make a video of it. And then the students can, if they need help with it, they can go home and watch the video and do their homework at the same time. So that kind of closes that gap of, not being able to get help. Tonight I was seeing how many students access their videos. I have 62 students in my Honors 8 class. I had 14 students so far access the video to see how they, for help with their homework. Other ways I use the videos is for studying for a test. So I'll make a practice test, make a video. Sometimes we go to a computer lab, and then the students can work independently at their speed and work for a practice test. It also works for students that are absent. I said, what was our assignment yesterday? So I said, well, the video's on Schoology, and so they can get themselves all caught up by watching the video and doing their assignment. And that also works for students on independent study. I did an unofficial survey today of my honors class. 31% said they didn't need to see the video because they got enough instruction in class. 13% were kind of flaking out, just didn't check. 15% said they didn't have a computer or internet at home. But they had one of the devices they could download the video at school and then take it home with them. 22% said they checked the videos all the time. So, let's see, 14, I think, what's it, 14 kids out of 60, so that's almost 25%, right? The other thing I do with the internet is Alan November also mentioned the use of edx.org. It's a website sponsored by combinations of colleges. I use this for extra credit. I've assigned 28 topics from the Introduction Algebra course. The topics parallel what we're covering in class, provide remediation and practice if the students want to take advantage of the opportunity. I also teach the Math 180 course at La Loma. This is our remedial class, in addition to the students' regular math class. So Math 180 students have computers twice a day. So I hear the clock. So I think if they had some one-to-one devices, they'd be able to complete more of the program than they do now. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I just wondered if we could hear a response to the question. That's great. Yeah. Thank you very much. From Ms. Williams, question about the cost and percentage of LCAP funds. Do we have a response for that?
Yes, currently for this year we have an LCAP budget of about $55 million. So if we look at the estimate on the next agenda item, or the annual lease payment, $877,185. So if you just want a percentage of that versus 55 million, you're looking at about 1.6% of the budget would be allocated to an annual ongoing lease payment for the devices.
All right, thank you. And thank you for your comments also. I didn't mean to cut you off. That was very helpful. Very helpful. Any other comments from the public?
My name is Dawn Pitcock. I teach science at La Loma Junior High, and it's kind of sad that science was left out of the presentation. As you may know, we are in the middle of a 3-year planned rollout of the next generation science standards. During that time, very little of our current curriculum, for 7th grade at least, is going to be usable after the rollout is complete. In the meantime, we are working on new units and creating those ourselves. And our learning management system, Schoology, has proven to be very helpful to us in making sure that all of the materials that we create are available to all of our students through the use of cows. Very shortly, that's not going to be enough for our students. As I mentioned earlier, very little of our current curriculum is going to be able to be used for the new standards in the 7th grade. And those students are going to need to be able to access materials outside of the classroom in order to complete assignments, etc. So the one-to-one devices are going to be very helpful to them in terms of being able to access materials, complete assignments, etc. There's the added benefit to teachers, of course, like me, who like the fact that I can push a couple buttons and take assignments and put all the grades into PowerSchool without having to enter a new set of computations or grades or entering data. One of the other things I'd like to point out is that while it's kind of time intensive to put things into the Schoology to begin with, the access, the whole process of putting the answer key and etc., it greatly decreases my amount of time in grading assignments. Having said that, nothing will ever replace a well-prepared teacher. And I just want to make that really clear up front, especially for my compadres in the audience. The one-to-one devices are a fabulous tool that we really, really need to be able to do our jobs well, and for our students to be able to access the materials that they will need in the coming times. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Welcome.
Good evening, Board. Dan Iverson, Principal of La Loma. What I'd like to share tonight is this issue we've been talking about of closing the achievement gap, and how do we do that? The idea of one-to-one devices really takes us to a new dimension in bringing our parents on board, because once teachers are able to download their resources on the Schoology format, actually the parents can go there and view those classroom resources just as well as the students can. So if there are videos there and parents are trying to help their youngsters at home, they can view those. If a student loses a worksheet, they can download a new one, or it could even be interactive and they could just submit it right online. So it really does solve a lot with the equity issue in terms of all students having access to that. But to me, it's a huge thing in being able to say to parents who are struggling on how to help their son or daughter in school to say, hey, if you go online, get the code, sign up. We know PowerSchool is good. PowerSchool is a static process. All they can do is with PowerSchool, which is wonderful, is see the grades, see the missing assignments. With Schoology, they can actually go online and they can see the teacher's calendar, see the deadline dates for projects that are upcoming, what's due tomorrow. When the student comes home and say, hey, Mom and Dad, I need to go to my friend's house. Do you have any homework? No. well, let's go check and see about that. So if the teachers keep their calendars up, they post their resources there, parents can see everything that the son or the daughter is going to see. The other thing is, if a student is absent, they could actually be at home taking care of business as the teacher posts resources online and follow that lesson and stay right with it. So to me, it would be a great vote to support one-to-one devices for our junior high students to keep them in our tech age. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Step right up. Welcome.
I just want to, Janine Zambo, Modesto City Schools. I just want to make a couple of comments about things I've heard here this evening. About feedback, Mr. Rich very eloquently stated that students, you could look at a student's device and see what answers they have and be able to do that. As a teacher, I can also then submit feedback to a student right away if I notice that they have some sort of incorrect statement in a written response or whatever the case might be. And whereas a student will generally take the comments I've written on their essay and toss them in the garbage can on the way out my classroom door, this gives them going into more of a text-based kind of situation. It comes to them and they really can't forget about it. It's right there in their face. Additionally, one of the things we've heard about tonight was CTE integration within not only our high schools, but our junior highs. And I have a wonderful eye doctor who explained to me that his new hires have a difficult time working with the technology that he has in his office because they're used to apps and they're used to things like that, but not a lot of other kinds of access to technology. The more technology skills we give our students, the better prepared they're going to be to enter the workforce, period, end of conversation. It follows right along with our career and college kinds of pathways that we want our students to engage in. Additionally, with regards to, in particular, math, my son is a student in the Sylvan District, and I know at least a couple of our board members know who his teacher is because their children have been the beneficiary of tutoring or classroom instruction. My son improved by 2 years last year in his math and scores, largely because the program that is being utilized in his class requires that he work to mastery. He may only have 10 or 15 questions on his homework assignment, but if he gets it wrong, it can regenerate. And there were tears and yelling and everything in my house, and Ms. Newman probably heard it all the way down the street. But my son had to do those problems to mastery because his parents are mean teachers. So he was able to improve greatly. This year, much easier for him. So just a little bit about that. One of the things Ms. Williams brought up was about our EL students. Many of the new curriculum pieces not only offer written translation, but also authentic audio translations so that our students can access content far better than just in a textbook. Like with the math instruction, being able to work to mastery on a computer program where they couldn't on a worksheet or out of a textbook. Same kind of concept. Lastly, Google Chromebooks, yes, they are cheaper, but students can't store anything there. Our Windows-based actual computers give students the opportunity of downloading PDFs and being able to work on them real time without necessarily having to have Wi-Fi access on some things.
Thank you. Good timing. It's amazing. All right, any other comments from the public? All right, comments from the board. Trustee Marks.
Well, first off, I just want to thank you all for the comments from the public and the helpful information, and also the staff for this very, very thorough report. Helped with understanding a lot of the issues that came up at the last board meeting. I also wanted to ask, since a couple of people brought it up, about the difference between Chromebook and Windows, and ask, how did we make that decision, or how was that decision made for using the Windows instead of Chromebook?
So this is probably best answered by Cindy Minter, our Director of Technology. In her absence, I will hobble my way through it. When we started at Davis High School, we did start with Chromebooks. Right. A Chromebook is an operating system that's basically a web browser. So anything you do has to be cloud-based. You store things in a Google Drive or a Dropbox, whatever it is, has to be stored in a cloud-based system. On a Windows device, you can store things locally as well as have access to other content or programs that would not be available solely on a cloud-based system. It's what we call a client-based system. So you could install a full version of Microsoft Office as opposed to the cloud version. You could install a full version of the Adobe Creative Suite, which Photoshop, InDesign, which every student computer has. You can install software specifically for our music classes or for our yearbook classes or for something specific that we would call, again, a client-based system as opposed to a cloud-based system.
Okay, so tell me, I didn't ask this question earlier, but I did think about it. So how are we protecting our students if they go home from, we'll call them predators on the internet, or even from accessing websites that might be harmful for them?
That's a valid question, and one as a parent of 3 kids in this district that really hits home for me. The same filter that we're by law required to have at the schools, the students all have to go through, it's called proxy server, has to go through that server no matter what internet connection they are on. They could be at McDonald's, they could be at home, they could be on our campus. It has to be the same proxy server that we go through. And they're constantly, we have a service called iBoss that we're constantly working with and updating. Every day there's new, malware and issues out there, and that company helps us protect those kids.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Brown?
So are we at the discussion phase?
We're at comments.
Comments.
From the board.
Okay, comments. So philosophically, I want to just state why I'm here as a board member. We as a family were able to give our kids the highest level of technology available constantly, and they performed well. My son, at 34 years of age, has retired from Google because he started before he could write on a computer, and technology was just part of his understanding and learning. I'm here because I want to give that same opportunity to every child in this district. I want to give that to the child who doesn't have a computer at home, whose parents don't have the means to be able to have one. I see a computer in a child's hands as the educational tool to lift an entire family. And I think that any time that we can put a device in a household and improve the learning and give the parents the opportunity to help their kids because they understand things that they have no concept of or learning on their own. Kids are going to teach their parents. Kids are going to teach their younger siblings. And we're going to see great things happen with every computer we send home with a child. So I think it's a huge risk for us to spend the amount of money that we need to. I think it's a huge risk to ask our teachers to each become totally proficient in teaching at the highest level with those computers, but I see great potential with our teachers. I see great passion in our teachers wanting to be able to deliver the resources at the highest level possible, and I see this is the way that we can do it. We have to invest in our kids, we have to invest in our families, we have to invest in the future of our community, and I see this as a very powerful way that we can do it now.
Trustee Walker?
I just don't want to get misquoted, because the newspaper spent about 6 months beating me up when I was running for office. Why is the guy that's an NASA civil software engineer against technology? I'm not against technology. It's a tool, not the tool. My concern here is we are rapidly moving towards the tool and the only tool. That's my concern. Always has been. As far as referencing Torlixon and Michael Kirst, if they're so fired up about this, tell them to cut a check. Because they don't adequately fund education in this state. 41st or 46th in the nation. They have not funded this new education rollout even close. If they want to cut the check, go for it. I would still have concerns. But I just want to make clear, there's wonderful things we can do with these devices. I think there's wonderful things that I've already seen that are available that are coming very soon. But if it's the only thing we're using and it's not a silver bullet, just don't misquote me. Trustee Brown, right over there on the right-hand side, they're not using a slide rule. It's TI 85, 86, 89. That's how we do the calculus now. Put a man on the moon with less technology in this phone. There's a way to do this halfway. All I said at the end of the last meeting was something that wasn't all or nothing. And I don't feel like that's what we're doing, and that's my concern, and I'll let it be at that.
Trustee Newman?
All right. Well, I came into this skeptical of whether to do this or not. I just feel like we've moved pretty fast. But I have changed my mind. And I changed my mind, and I'm going to support this. And there's three reasons why. One, thank you to Mr. Flora, Ms. Phillips, and Mr. Coates, and Ms. Pidcock, and Mr. Iverson. Thank you for coming, and Dr. Zambo, for coming tonight and sharing. I know these Loloma people. My kids I spent 4 years there as a parent, and I think that's just really important to hear how it's going to be used. And so I appreciate that. I appreciate your input, and I appreciate the staff's report on that. The second reason is what appears on page 10 and 11 of what is available for us to buy. And if you look down the list here, Publisher A, it has a printed version available, but Publisher B does not. Publisher C does not. If you go to the social science, Publisher 1 does not have a print available. Publisher 2 does not. This is where I guess things are going. And so whether we are uncertain or not, this is the reality of what we can purchase. So that's our reality we have to live with. And the third reason is the report we just had, our scores. We have to do something. There is an urgency to this. And so that's why I would support this. I'd urge our math teachers to still keep paper and pencil, please. Please. My son Mason, who's gifted in math, would urge me to say that. So those of you who had him as a student, you know. So I'm in favor of this.
Right. Any other comments from the board? All right. This is a report.
But the next one's a voting one.
Okay. All right, report only, no action to be taken on that item. Next we go to item B8. Approval, thank you. Approval of state and local government master lease purchase agreement with Hewlett Packard Financial Services Company.
Mr. Zerley will make this presentation.
Thank you. And since Cindy Mentor could not be with us tonight, this is just a repeat of the agenda item that was at the last board meeting. The exact same agenda item was repeated for this one, regarding the annual lease payment for the one-to-one devices for 7th and 8th grade students. I know there was some discussion at the last meeting about vendors to roll this out for us, but again, what we're sticking with the original recommendation from the technology department as far as vendors in the lease arrangements.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the board? Any comments from the public? Comments from the board? All right. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the state and local government master lease purchase agreement with Hewlett Packard Financial Services Company. I have a motion from Trustee Newman, seconded from Trustee Grimbo. Preferential student representative vote? Aye. All those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No.
All right. The motion carries 5-1 with our student also voting.